Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, the #1 source for news, analysis, and discussion on the Detroit Red Wings, the NHL, and all things hockey. Here are your hosts, Ryan Hanna, Brad Crisco, and Evan Lopsinger.
Today, a Montreal Canadiens fan tweeted at me saying they hoped I got hit by a car. And I would prefer that than watch another Detroit Red Wings versus New York Islanders game ever again.
I also would prefer if you got hit by a car versus me ever watching that game again.
I was saying to someone right before the game, like, I know there have been exceptions. There were big games, I think, last season and the season before with an overtime winner and things like that. But Detroit versus Long Island is just always a snooze fest. It is the world's most Minnesota Wild team, as you were saying pre-episode. Like, the Islanders are more Minnesota Wild than the Minnesota Wild are anymore, versus the Detroit Red Wings, who have been through the throes of a rebuild and are just now starting to find offense and have been a very beatable team offensively. It, at worst, was last night. And at best, one of the teams is good, but it's almost never anything worth watching. Look, the Red Wings walked away with 2 points. Alex Lyon was stellar. Simon Edvinsson had one of his best games so far, and those are the things that matter. But my God, that was painful.
That might be one of the most painful victories of all time. That's one of the worst hockey games I've ever watched. And I know people are immediately yelling at me, what about the 9-2 to Arizona or the 11-1 to Pittsburgh, whatever it was? At least one fan base was having a good time during those games. I don't know if there's a single Islanders fan or a single Red Wings fan who enjoyed watching that game last night. That was the definition of a snooze fest.
November 21st, 2024, that evening, you should fill up your calendar because that's when they play the Islanders again.
It's too much. It's too much.
I need a month to recover.
No, it's whatever the opposite of too much is.
That's right. So if you're a Habs fan out there, you're going to be pretty happy because I do choose the car. Folks, welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, here to talk to you about all things Detroit Red Wings hockey, which is a very rich statement because that was the only game that happened from last episode to now. The world of the NHL and lots more. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
And I'm Evan.
On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, we're here to talk to you about that game. We joke about how boring it was, but there are quite a few takeaways. I was laughing as we were making up our plan for this episode, saying, well, that game was so weird, it was actually interesting to talk about. So there is a lot to cover on that front. We'll be talking about the long-term projections of the Red Wings and how much you can panic based on that game and how Edvinsson did and how Lyon did and what the offense is or is not doing. We are going to give you some more notes on Red Wings and prospects, namely Carter Mazur, who is out with an injury, some conversations about the Detroit Red Wings front office, and then NHL news. As I alluded to at the start of the episode, Montreal fans aren't happy, but Jacob Trouba fans certainly are after the hit last night. The Four Nation face-off and the Frozen Frenzy, those are just all like meaningless names that are melting in my head, and whatever else we can get into before we jump into overtime. Before all that, I want to let you know that this podcast is primarily supported by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. If you want to support the show, you get access to benefits like our bonus overtime episodes, which record right after these main ones. We answer any questions that didn't make the main show. We let loose, have fun, tell stories. There's some fun bloopers for you. I think there's one from the pre-show today. You also get access to the Patreon exclusive Discord. In addition, you're automatically entered into all of our giveaways. For example, we give away 2 tickets to every Detroit Red Wings home game, the vast majority going directly to our Patreon supporters. So again, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. Also, a big batch of fun stuff was just sent out to our patrons. So very, very good time to join the Patreon if you have been thinking about it. The Red Wings came into the game against the Islanders not exactly doing the best in the standings, and yet you knew the Red Wings and the Islanders, at least on paper, were going to be largely competing for the same spot. Yeah, we don't know how the season's going to go, but if you were to categorize the Islanders and the Red Wings, most people would say wild card hopefuls at best. So you want to come into this game, if you're the Red Wings, saying you need to walk away with 2 points because these are the games that matter. You need to come out and have a good performance, try not to drop a point, but at the very least, come out with a win. And the Red Wings did it in one of the weirdest ways possible. They won with 11 shots on goal. A 1-0 victory with 11 shots on goal. What did we just watch?
Nothing is probably the best answer. The Red Wings, all right, I'll get the positives from a broad scale. We'll call it out of the way first. Alex Lyon, phenomenal MVP type game. 29 save shutout. I don't think the Islanders had a ton of high danger chances, but the ones they did have, he got, and the easy ones he got. And there's some credit to be given to the Red Wings about they didn't give up a substantial amount of high danger chances. It wasn't zero, and the Islanders definitely had a bunch more of them than the Red Wings did. But they did that. That was a positive. That's all they did well. That was outside of one nice pass from Tarasenko to Kane. I think I counted one other legitimate scoring chance the whole game off the stick of Jonathan Berggren. That was, and I don't use this word lightly, and I know it's going to sound like an over exaggeration, but offensively, that performance was pitiful. And it wasn't lack of skill, although that contributed to it. It wasn't a super strong opponent. Yeah, the Islanders have some good D. That was good old-fashioned disinterest, laziness. That was as bad of a performance I've seen. They tried chipping and chasing, except nobody chased. If they did get close to the puck, they didn't do a good job of hitting, forechecking, anything. They didn't try to control the puck at all. They had almost no offensive zone time, at least in terms of sustained control and chances. I mean, they had 11 shots on net. You can point to a couple individual performances and say this guy or that guy did okay, or in like one guy's case did pretty good. But overall, top to bottom, that was just as lackluster of a performance as I've seen from the Red Wings in a long time. Even the game they got blown out by the Rangers, at least the, for lack of a better term, give a shit meter looked higher than it did last night. Like, just nothing happened.
It's hard to pull away positives from an 11-shot performance, especially when we're trying to dissect the offensive performance. I did think Simon Edvinsson maybe had one of his best games as a pro so far. Like, he really is starting to come into his own, and he led the team in ice time last night. I would say he was the second best player on the team. You know, Andrew Kopp looks better than he did last year. I mean, the bar was very low, which is probably rude to say, but I think he's moving the right direction now. Last night was tough to watch. I will be in a full agreement with both of you. And at the end of the day, I guess 2 points is 2 points. We can't stew on it as much as we should, or we feel like we should. And the Red Wings are somehow still kind of hanging around in the division. Like, I know it's still early, but they're not they're not 10 points or 8 points behind the leaders. You know, they've got 2 games in hand and they're only 3 points back. Like, the Red Wings are very much still in the division, but there's a lot of warning bells going off in my head.
And I think that's the big point about the game last night. Yeah, it's a win. Nobody's going to be upset that you took 2 points from a team you're competing for with a playoff spot. Everybody can watch that game and be miserable for 60 minutes and at the end of it go, nice, 2 points. But the warning signs are, you could argue the Red Wings have been outplayed in all 6 of their games, and there's an argument they probably should be 0-6, maybe 1-5, because I think the one Nashville game was pretty close to a coin flip that the Red Wings happened to win. But the other 5, there's no debate. They got outplayed. And the problems don't seem to be improving. Last night and is a good indication in some areas they might be getting worse. And this is with the whole caveat. It's only 6 games. But there's been no progression. There's been no signs of this issue's resolving itself. This issue's getting better. They're improving here. Yeah, we can point to a couple, and I might mean literally a couple players who are showing positive progression. Simon Edvinsson and Alex Lyon being the obvious answers here. I don't think Seider's playing up to his standard. Larkin, Kane, Tarasenko, none of them are close to their standard. Raymond's had his moments, but they've only been moments. The defense, by and large, we've beat to death already to this point in the season, has been bad. The offense has been stagnant. Andrew Kopp's one of the better stories on the team this year, which, if we have to give that much time of day, with all due respect to Andrew Kopp, that's a problem because there's far more important players we need to be spending time on, and they're not doing enough to be worth talking about. And yeah, the Red Wings are 3-3. At best, if you go by deserve to win a meter, they should be 1-5.
Is that what it actually is? 1-5?
It's 0-6 or 1-5. Like I said, the one game was, I think, 50.1 and 49.9. Everything.
I don't care about the deserve to win a meter for the record, but because I think certain expected goal models and how it kind of accumulates versus the actual quality goals. But just for the sake of it.
It's very subjective. But if you go by who deserved to win each game, generously, it's 1-5 for the Red Wings. You give them the coin flip. You give them the benefit of the doubt. This team right now is showing no signs of catching a playoff spot, which is to the point that I think Evan was trying to make, and it's accurate. As they are playing now, it almost doesn't matter that they're 500 because they don't look like a 500 team. They look more like the San Jose Sharks than they do the Ottawa Senators to this point in the season.
They are very reminiscent right now of a team that's very much eliminated from the playoff picture at the end of March.
Okay, I have to jump in because I think you guys are completely right. Like, there's no waving away last night's offense. A 11-shot performance, and I have to acknowledge with like just under 12 minutes left, they had 11 shots. They actually finished the game with 10 because the Islanders in-arena scorekeeper has apparently, he must have Lou Lamoriello right over their shoulder, and they removed his shot, but they added it back after the game. There's no waving away an 11-shot performance, period. The offense was bad. We all watched it. That was terrible. You're not going to win virtually all of your games where you're putting up 11 shots. They just happened to be against a pitiful performance from the Islanders, and anytime they did get a quality chance, and you're right, Brad, more than Detroit, but not by a country mile, Lyon came in and was stellar. Absolutely. I think by and large, the defending in this game led to a lack of offense that happens with these two teams, and poor offensive efforts to varying degrees between the two means we saw what we saw. But the Seider-Edvinsson pairing, Seider had way more uncharacteristic turnovers that game. Like, I agree with you. That wasn't a good game from him, but he still played well for big chunks outside of the turnovers. And generally when he did, Edvinsson was there to save him, or Lyon was there to save him, and the rest of the defense is the rest of the defense. But by and large, I thought there were positives to draw from that game. And to me, here's the optimistic outlook based on the performance we saw. Has the start to the season been good? No. Are the concerns about the offense genuine and warranted? Yeah, absolutely, because they are better than what they're showing. I don't think this offense is another top 10 offense on paper like they were last year. I don't think we thought they would be last year preseason as well. But I also don't think they are like a league worst offense like you saw last night or anything like that. I think this offense is starting off way too slow, and that's a concern. It's a real thing. But I still look at the talent they have and what they were able to do last year and think, I don't think I'm crazy for still being optimistic that they can figure it out. They have a new look in their top six, and they're relying a lot on Kane on that second line. They're relying on Tarasenko, and you're still trying to figure out how he fits into the team. And have they started off in an acceptable way? I don't think so, but I still think as the season goes on, there's room to improve there. And I shouldn't say room to improve. I think you can be optimistic that they will improve. That's a big if. Like, it's not guaranteed. And sometimes teams regress really, really hard, way too far the other way. But to me, I just don't see how you have Larkin and Raymond and DeBrincat and Kane. Let's say Tarasenko just doesn't fit in for Detroit, and he's the one who made that great play last night, so it feels weird to use him as an example. you still have enough offense to be better than, bottom 5 in the league or whatever they're playing at right now. So last night was pitiful. It was pathetic to watch offensively, but I just don't really, I'm not throwing in a towel yet or saying that this is, a bottom 5 or a bottom 6 offense in this league. I think they have some figuring out to do. I think readiness and motivation and how Derek Lalonde hasn't prepared, that's something that's going to have to get figured out here and fast, because the results aren't going to go your way, as you both have correctly said. But I'm not there yet.
No, that's the thing. It's 6 games. The point that you made is right. It's, they've stolen 4 to 6 points early in the season, which are going to hopefully be very useful at the end of the season. But if they don't improve, this is a lottery team. This isn't a playoff team. If they are able to improve, then we're probably looking at a run like they had last year. And it's never a bad thing to bank some points you probably didn't deserve. So there's obviously room for improvement, because some of the Red Wings' biggest underperformers are some of their best players this year. So lots of room for improvement. That is the hope. But what they've given us through 6 games doesn't inspire confidence.
My thing is, is the goaltending going to be this good all season? You're not going to have Alex Lyon doing this every game, but I think what you've seen on average is probably within range. Is the defense going to get a lot better? I'm sorry. I just don't see it with this lineup. It depends on how much Edvinsson and Seider carry you every night. I feel stupid that my bold prediction was that by the end of the year, Seider and Edvinsson would be the top pairing. It took 20 seconds. And
It may have not even been a game. It was in the second period of the home opener.
And it was the right choice, because they look good together, and this isn't something where you can spread the talent. This decor is not good, plain and simple. And so unless something changes there, you're not going to get a different result. The forwards, I think you can look at it and say, this is uncharacteristically bad. You can be negative and pessimistic about the Red Wings forward group, but you can't look at that forward group and say that's a bottom 5 forward core in the league. Plain and simple.
If you're going to have a definitive mark between your top 6 forwards and your bottom, the top 6 have to be going all the time. Because if you're banking on constant production from the bottom 6, you're going to have a bad time.
Yeah.
And I've actually liked what Berggren and Kasper have looked like so far in the bottom 6. But if DeBrincat, Larkin, Raymond are not the straw stirring the drink, this team is in trouble.
And do you think they're going to be like that all season, though?
No, I don't. So this is very much a look at the results versus look at the process. And I'm like, results? I'm okay with those results. The process, I'm like, this is really, really bad.
So, and all this to say, you guys are right. If this doesn't change, it's not sustainable. Because again, the defense isn't going to magically get better, and the goaltending is the goaltending. If it's this good, it's still not enough to do what the Red Wings are hoping to do this season. And there is a world where the offense is underperforming all year. That happens in the NHL, but that's then a preparedness and systems and whatever else you want to call it problem, and that's a whole other conversation. But as the players are right now, I just don't think they're this bad. And execution, readiness for the game, whatever it is, Patrick Kane went out and said, the team has to be willing to hang on to the puck a little bit more on offense. They have to be doing things a lot better than what they were doing. It can't just be, chip, not chase, and then just focus on defending on your own zone. It's everyone right now. It's genuinely everyone. But the personnel is there to be better than this.
Statistically, they're a bottom 5 expected goals team in the NHL right now. I think one of the models I saw had them as low as bottom 3.
But I don't think they're a bottom 5.
No, I don't think so either.
Team on paper. That's just how they've executed so
far. I think
far.
over the course of an 82 game season, with as they're constructed, you hope they're about league average. I think that's attainable for this group with everything going the way it is, and they need to wake up, because as good of a story as Alex Lyon's been, and he's been awesome, it's taken him having the league's best save percentage to get them to 500. He's number 1 in the NHL right now.
Yeah, minimum 3 games played. He is at
955, I believe. That feels sustainable, right?
Yeah.
And if there's anything we know, it's Alex Lyon has a pitch count. he is not going to be able to play 55 games this year and give you those kind of numbers. The team is going to have to play better in front of him and Cam Talbot to try and alleviate some of the rubber they are seeing on a nightly basis.
Well, let's talk about Alex Lyon. You said he has a pitch count.
I haven't blinked since we started. That is my tribute.
Yeah, you weren't programmed to blink. They forgot that part. You were one of the early alpha skinwalkers. Right. You say he has a pitch count, and I think he does. Like, I don't think you can run him the way they did last season. But the difference is, and we were talking about this in the group chat, the difference is I don't know that you can say this is going to be the same as last season because they haven't sat him until November or whenever it was. And as long as you're not playing him like 12, 13 games or, 95% of the games over a 2-3 month stretch, then maybe you can get more out of Lyon this year. Maybe you do end up with a more distance between your 1A and your 1B, or you have a true starter and a backup or whatever it is. Crazy to think?
No, and Prashant had that great point last year about the November 17th start. That was his first game of the year. So, yeah, I think how you space out those starts is going to really matter for him. I think he can play 50 games. I think that's well within the realm of him. But, yeah, it's going to have to be closer to a 1A, 1B than it is he's the guy, Cam Talbot's a 2. But, again, if you space out the work, what was it that Prashant said in the group chat? It was 44 appearances in 66 games. And that was the stretch that Lyon had from November 17th to the end of the season. Like, that's a phenomenal workload. And you give him a couple more starts than the 44, but you're starting him now. Well, he's already played a few games. I think there's a world where he can be, quote unquote, the guy. But it's just how do you separate that? I don't think he can run 3, 4, 5 games in a row.
Not that this makes sense for the Red Wings or that I'm saying they should do it, but if you're a team who's goalie needy right now and shouldn't be like Colorado, like you want to be competing for the cup, you are absolutely calling Steve Yzerman about Alex Lyon right now. Like, no way he's not turning heads.
Why would Steve Yzerman entertain that?
Well, you don't, right? Unless they're willing to pay something ridiculous like a first or whatever. He is on the most agreeable goalie contract in the league based on his performance. And teams are going to be saying, I want that. Especially teams who are paying money for guys who are, pulling the floor out from beneath them.
Yeah. The message it would send to the locker room if you traded him right now would be catastrophic.
Yes.
He's the main reason they're 500. He's the guy that's probably going to have to carry them to the playoffs if they want to do it. And also, if you want Cossa up next year, Lyon's probably the guy right now that you want with him. Maybe you do the 3-guy platoon with Talbot, but you could always trade Talbot. Lyon might want too much money and walk him for agency, but it's nice to have options open. And I'm not saying don't trade Lyon, but that's a trade deadline day, you're well out of the playoffs move.
According to Sport Logic, Alex Lyon is also third in early season goals saved above expected at, I think it's 1.43 here. So he's been showing up, man. We talked about Alex Lyon. We talked about the forwards and how they're going to have to pull it together. And we'll get to lineups for future games in a moment here. But let's talk more about Simon Edvinsson. We mentioned the fact that he came up huge multiple times in that game, playing with Seider. That pairing already looks like they are working well and meshing, and definitely they have room to grow. His ascension to Detroit's top pair is a low bar. I understand that. But this is some really, really good stuff that you're seeing if you're a Red Wings fan. I'm not a big kind of early season doom and gloom guy, as you can see by this episode so far. Like, I thought last night was really bad, but I'm still not assuming this is going to be for all 82. I would be very doom and gloom right now if we saw what we saw through 6 games and Edvinsson was bad. And that's just not the case. He has done fantastically considering his position and how well he's acquitted himself next to Mo Seider on that top pair. 24 minutes, really tough tests, tough matchups. That's a really promising sign for Detroit.
He's done everything you could have realistically hoped for to this point in the season. Last night, I'd say his only blemish was he tried doing a bit too much in the offensive zone at times and was just forcing passes that weren't there, but you could see what he was trying. He was a rock defensively. He was one of the few Red Wings who could effectively transport the puck or transition it up ice. And yeah, we talked about preseason. Well, the bad idea attached to Simon Edvinsson on the first pair with Seider is, oh my God, how bad is the defense going to be below them? And it's been bad. But if they're comfortable playing him 25 minutes a night,
that's quite the message.
Yeah, it's a great sign for Edvinsson. And if they're going to ride them that hard, that many minutes in any given game, yeah, that might be the formula. It's kind of the Mo Seider treatment. Hey, kid, buckle up. You don't have another choice. You're all in.
Instead of making Mo Seider's minutes any easier this year, all they did was get him a friend who could do it with him.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's not going to change. Like, that's the one thing that I'm actually pessimistic about. Like, this defense is not going to change unless there's a change to the personnel. You just can't run what you're running. Maybe as Johansson gets better as the season goes on, I can actually see some steadiness from below there. And then maybe, on 55% of the nights, you get something that's actually decent. But as of right now, like, I'm not hopeful that you're going to be doing much other than banking on Seider and Edvinsson. And they'll do well more times than not. And there's going to be games where they're going to be, identity lined where a negative score sheet or more chances against, and then what they generated is still a win because they're up against the McDavid-Draisaitl line or whatever. But still, I just don't have a lot of optimism that the support from below is going to be there.
I have none. Zero optimism there. I look at Ben Trott last night and go, well, he didn't play awful, and he was comfortably the third best defenseman on the team. Like, that's not, again, this episode's theme is sustainability. And yeah, even if Seider and Edvinsson are playing great together, you've still got 30 to 35 minutes a night where they are not on the ice. And Johansson's good. He's shown some promise. He's also shown why he's a rookie and a lot of the flaws he needs to work out in his game. Mata's fairly steady, but he's not a lockdown guy and he's not an offense guy. He's a spot holder. The renaissance of Justin Hall has been a nice story. He's worked his way back to a number 6 defenseman, which he's heavily overpaid for, but he was out of the lineup for most of last year, and I think most people would agree he's firmly a top 6 defenseman on the team this year. Petrie has had moments. Sherratt has had moments. Gustafsson is single-handedly making me question our pro scouting department.
We've done quite a bit of that over the years.
Yeah, especially when you see what Gostisbehere's doing in Carolina, but we won't relitigate that. It's pretty bleak, and Sandin Pellikka is probably still a year and a half away. Bouillon, Wallinder all look like they could be decent NHLers, but they're not game changers. They're not the guys who are going to anchor your second pair. At least they don't look like it yet. There are big concerns on the Red Wings defense right now, short-term and long-term, outside of Sandin Pellikka. It's, Steve's got his work cut out for him, and in the short term, Newsy's really got his work cut out for him.
All this to say, I do think it's a positive. Like, the fact that we're sitting here and not repeating last season with Seider, because yes, the Gostisbehere loss of offense is big, and that's a different conversation. There's no loss of defense with Gostisbehere. You just don't get any of the offense with Gustafsson, and you get the same defense pretty much. But the fact that Edvinsson is now giving you a top pair that is actually showing up extremely well, even in games where everyone else isn't, that's huge.
Yeah, wasn't there a stat floating around last night that despite only having 11 shots on net, Edvinsson was 58% in the expected goal share or something like that? Like, how is that possible? You're playing the top pair 24 minutes in a game where your team had 11 shots. That is some yeoman's work on defense. That is, we always said he's got a high bar to clear to have a Mo Seider type rookie season, and he's not going to have the offense to get there. But defensively, he might. He's got a chance.
If his problem on games where he's played well is that he's trying to do too much, Mo Seider tried to do too much. It's a natural reaction when you're a talented kid and you're being thrust into the top of the lineup and saying, hey, go play these big important minutes. You're going to want to do too much. And I'd rather, try to tame a lion than paint stripes on a kitty cat. So
you see that same thing happen in junior with top prospects too. They try to bring their team that don't have the same elite traits that they do into the fight, and they do too much with the puck. How many years have we seen the Red Wings defense just chip it off the glass and out? I will take Seidman Edvinsson holding onto the puck, trying to do too much 10 times out of 10 over that.
Don't worry, we got the other 35 minutes of the game for the glass.
Yeah. And coming back to the defense, I think the amount of minutes that the top pair are playing is all you need to know about their confidence and the other 5 to 7 defensemen they have that they can play any given night. There is definitely an issue with Ben Schropp playing over 20 minutes a night, but what else are you going to do?
It's not just that top pairing's playing 25 minutes a night. It's that top pairing has a rookie, and it's still necessitated.
Upcoming, the Red Wings have the New Jersey Devils at home, the Buffalo Sabres on the road, and then the Edmonton Oilers at home on Sunday evening. We are going to be recording a late night episode to make sure that we get the Edmonton game coverage in there for you. But those 3 games, every set of games is going to be big for Detroit, but there's going to be tests of varying degrees, whether it's an Atlantic Division foe or, Connor McDavid's Edmonton Oilers and, Godspeed Seider and Edvinsson for that one, or the New Jersey Devils who want to be the team that's entering that wild card race or more that the Red Wings were in last season. We're going to see how they stack up, and they're not going to be able to repeat the 11-shot performance. The lineup in this afternoon's practice was a lot more reminiscent of what we saw towards the start of the season with some alterations, obviously. Raymond, Larkin, DeBrincat, Tarasenko, Compher, Kane, Veleno, Kasper, Berggren, Rasmussen, Kopp, Fischer, and the bottom 6 is interchangeable. Edvinsson-Seider, Sherratt, Petrie, Mata, Johansson, Gustafsson, Hall, and we'll see what they actually decide on defense. They still have some time for that, but they're going to have to find something consistent here, and it's going to have to happen because those 3 games are not going to be easy tests for different reasons. You can't bank on what the Islanders didn't do happening for you every game. So we'll see how that stretch of games goes. More on the Red Wings to come, but first we're going to take a quick break here to hear from the sponsors of the Winged Wheel podcast. We love a great deal as much as the next podcast, but we're not going to take a bunch of slap shots to the shins just to save a few bucks. It has to be easy. No hoops, no BS. So when Mint Mobile told us it was easy to get wireless for $15 a month with the purchase of a 3-month plan, we called them on it. We gave a longtime Winged Wheel podcast listener a chance to try Mint Mobile, and the first things they told us were that activation and setup were super easy and how simple, effective, and user-friendly the Mint Mobile site is. To get started, go to mintmobile.com/wingedwheel. There, you'll see that right now, all 3-month plans are only $15 a month, including the unlimited plan. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number, along with all your existing contacts. Find out how easy it is to switch to Mint Mobile and get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/wingedwheel. That's mintmobile.com/wingedwheel. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/wingedwheel. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. This episode of the Winged Wheel podcast is proudly brought to you by Labatt Blue Light. Created in 1983, this premium light Canadian Pilsner is a delicately balanced beer brewed with Cascade hops and a blend of malt. It's fresh, crisp, and brewed to the highest quality standards. There's a little bit of Canadian kindness in every sip of Labatt Blue Light. How did it get in there? They're Canadian. That's how. You can spread the love yourself by sharing a Labatt. And when you do share a Labatt, you're not just sharing a beer. You're sharing an experience that'll pair with anything from hockey to a hoedown. So next time you're watching hockey with your buds, be sure to share a Labatt, because while you might not all root for the same team, although we on this podcast do hope you're rooting for Detroit, you can all enjoy a Labatt Blue Light. We honestly love going to games in Detroit and seeing Labatt being the beer that fans clamor for all over the arena. It's a reliable beer, and it's great to have in your hand when celebrating a goal. So head to the link in the description of this episode or the one you see on your screen to find Labatt in stores near you today. You must be 21 or older, and as always, enjoy responsibly. I really like the Athletics fan confidence surveys, and they did one over the summer where we saw a representation of, impatience within the Red Wings fandom. I think they dropped from 12th to 21st in overall, fan confidence based on how their own fans and fans outside the team perceived Detroit. And that made sense. It was like, yeah, you can't have imagined a lot more than that. The Athletic also did something that they just published, and I'll link to it, where they asked 40 high-ranking league execs, general managers, assistant GMs, senior advisors, scouting directors, et cetera, and they were asked to rank, their top front offenses across the NHL, and Detroit was actually top 10. And I really would have thought that based on the kind of national view of the Red Wings that you often see from media and commentary and other fans, where they're like, oh, why hasn't Yzerman just fixed this? And the Red Wings suck and there's no nuance to it at all. I was really surprised to see him that far up the list.
The way I would put it is this. The Red Wings have a lot of former players within the organization and have also spread out their executive talent across the league. And that might be why they're viewed so favorably. You
look at Jim Nill and you look at the other kind of Red Wings adjacent folks across the league. Yeah. And then you also look at their scouting department and Håkan Andersson and everything they have in Sweden. And those also factor into it as well. And I also think other GMs are going to be the first to notice things like, yeah, that guy has never walked up to the stage happy at a draft lottery. That guy has never, had the opportunity to pick a Connor Bedard or whatever. And, we talk about the Red Wings and pro scouting and that being an issue. These are also GMs who see a lot of the guys that the Red Wings have signed and they like them or also would have wanted to have signed them to contracts or have signed them to contracts previously. So I think it's a mixture of there's pre-existing reputation here. I think there's a lot of what Yzerman built in Tampa Bay is probably coloring opinion as well, fair or not. But to me, I was like, oh, that's the first non-Red Wings perspective that I thought was generous towards the team.
I think it depends what league front offices deem as the most important part of running a team, because we talked about it after the Raymond and Seider contracts were signed. I think the one thing Yzerman has done extremely well is positioning himself cap-wise, which we know is a big, big deal around the league, properly managing your cap space. It's really, really bad this year. Like, they're at the cap for a team that is hard-pressed to make the playoffs. But they've got Larkin cheap, they've got Seider cheap, they've got Raymond cheap long-term. They've got the core built for a window where it's going to be very positive value on their contracts and a very strong prospect system to build around them. I'm not going to go into they're still missing a superstar or two to make it sustainable, but they've got the foundation in place. And when you look at the foundation, Danielson, Kasper, Edvinsson, Sandin Pellikka, Cossa, they've got some legit studs there to build around those three guys, and they're going to have them on ELCs or second-year contracts, which are going to be cheap and effective. So the most important part of what Steve Yzerman has had to do since he has come into the Detroit Red Wings looks very promising. If you look at the short term, the Red Wings have a huge problem in the pro scouting department, and ultimately that still does fall on Yzerman. They have signed a lot of bad contracts to too much money to too much term. And you look at the roster now, that's why you have a capped-out team who is hard-pressed to make the playoffs. So he's not without fault. I think his depth drafting has been bad, but he's nailed the first round more often than not. I feel like he's had some good signings in free agency, but it has caused more problems than it has caused solutions. So, yeah, you can nitpick this year, and I do look at this iteration of the Red Wings and go, Yzerman made a lot of mistakes to get to this point, but then you look at the most important part down the line, and you can go, I see it. Because in the short term, I have no idea what Steve Yzerman's plan is. It's a lot of incoherent, jumbled mess, but you look at the long term and you go, I see it. And I'm guessing that's what the rest of the front offices are looking at, going, they don't care if they make the playoffs this year. They shouldn't care for the next 2 years. Their team is relying on right now a bunch of 18, 19, and 20-year-olds. So why would they care right now? So that would be my theory as to why they scored in the top 10, because, yeah, if you look at the team now, it's a bottom 10 answer.
I'll say this. Mike Greer better have had the Red Wings at number 1.
And to wrap up Red Wings news, Carter Mazur took an ugly hit the other night and has been out since. There haven't been any real updates, and you can see the Grand Rapids Griffins making roster moves to basically account for the fact that he's not back, and they're not really expecting to have Marco Kasper back yet either, which is crummy for the Griffins. Good for the Red Wings about Kasper, but hoping Carter Mazur can bounce back and this doesn't affect his season too much. Really, the moment he took that contact, I was like, oh, I hope that's not long-term. Ugly, ugly looking hit. So hoping Carter Mazur is okay. Let's jump into NHL news here, and let's start with the hit that had a Montreal fan hoping that I got hit by a car, which was the most sane Habs fan response that you could have imagined.
The Trouba train was right there. He could have said that.
He could have, but I think he was just too upset. Jacob Trouba lined up Justin Barron along the boards, and it was a huge hit, and there was contact with the head because of how Barron kind of was skating and then dipped and tried to cut in, et cetera, et cetera. There was a fight after, which you could understand based on the results. And I looked at that and I thought, not a good result. Like, obviously it's an ugly looking hit, but that one to me was a classic. Like, you can't skate like that in the NHL. I understand Trouba has a reputation, but his elbow was tucked. He committed to the hit, and he committed along a trajectory that stayed the same the whole way. To me, Barron was skating in a way where, one, he tried to cut in late. He had his whole body exposed. His head and his body dipped last second by, a good amount. And I don't think his head was up. Like, I don't think he was paying attention to what was coming at him. And to me, that's like, you got to get off the tracks. You can't put yourself in that situation in the NHL. You're going to get run, whether it's Trouba or Zegras.
Every time there's a big hit, so much blame gets put on the guy getting rocked, which 9 out of 10 times, I don't care how vulnerable a guy puts himself in a position, the onus is still on the hitter to not do anything, call it illegal. 9 out of 10 times. This is the one. Like, this was textbook head down. I don't even think he looked at Trouba. I don't think he was aware he was there. And how are you, as an NHL player, crossing the blue line with your head down, ignoring the fact that you probably should be aware Jacob Trouba's on the ice, because he is a greasy, greasy player, and I've got a lot of time to rant about what a dirty player he is. But even if it's not him, you come in the zone in that position, you are going to get lit up 10 out of 10 times. Head down, not paying attention to what's going on in the middle of the ice. Like, I have no idea what was going through Barron's head before it was Jacob Trouba's shoulder.
Say the line, Bart.
I'm not going to say the line. Obviously, this hit gets a lot of views and commentary because it's a big, aggressive, violent hit by none other than Jacob Trouba. I think if it wasn't him, let's say it's any other defenseman in the NHL who's not known for laying guys out. Does this really get that kind of mention? I don't think quite as much. And I don't think I have a different sentiment than you guys. Like, I'm usually the guy defending these monster hits. Like, I think that's a very integral part of playing defense and playing hockey. Justin Barron's got to know. You got to know who's on your side of the ice. And he's not in a spot where you wouldn't expect contact. Like, he's crossing the blue line. That's where a lot of guys start to think about chipping the puck in if they've run out of space. Like, that is a contact zone. It's not like he's cutting through the middle and gets cheap shotted without the puck. He is the puck carrier. He enters the zone and gets absolutely lit up. So I can understand why people are upset about it and saying it's a dirty hit. It was extremely aggressive. I'm sure there is a debate on this, but what is Jacob Trouba supposed to do? Justin Barron's upper body is very well below the dasher. Trouba tries to get as low as possible, and he hits right through him. clearly the NHL agrees, which once again, you can debate that as well. I've honestly, this time I've got no problem with it.
The NHL's official ruling, because they did look at it, of course, it was determined that Trouba's hit was a legal full body check with Barron's chest as the main point of contact. If there was contact with Barron's head, that contact was covered under Rule 48.1, which considers whether the player attempted to hit squarely through the opponent's body and the head was not picked as a result of poor timing, poor angle of approach, or unnecessary extension of the body upward or outward. So basically saying if there was head contact, it wasn't on Trouba, which is...
He didn't give him the forearm shiver like we've seen him do in the past. There wasn't like he was a late pass or a late hit. I don't know if this is just a lack of self-preservation from Justin Barron, and we've seen that in the recent iteration of the NHL where guys just think when they get rid of the puck, they're not going to get lit up, and then they do, and then we have this conversation again. I don't know.
I think a lot about the Hronek hit that he took from Reeves, and I was like, my initial reaction was like, yeah, I think Reeves extended upwards, and I didn't really like that hit at first, and you take the bias out of it. I remember watching it later saying it's still ugly, but you can see the argument of, well, Hronek put himself in that position, and by all rights, there's a strong argument to say that he hit through under the same kind of assumption that you made with Trouba here. And I don't think those are one-to-one hits at different areas of the ice, etc. But still, I think, bias aside, you look at, obviously, Habs fans, of course they're going to be mad about that. You're like, that's part of hockey. It's going to be part of it.
And I'm going to be just as mad as the Habs fans are if that's Lucas Raymond laying on the ice.
Totally.
I'm going to be losing my mind and looking for retribution. That's completely normal as a fan. I totally understand it.
Anyhow, more NHL news, or I should say not NHL news, but the NHL's version of its, World Cup or whatever, it's offsetting Olympics solution, which is starting out on a smaller basis because Russia is still, doing the whole war thing. Canada, USA, Sweden, Finland, 4 nations face off has kind of crept up on us, and we're already seeing the first iterations of angry roster debates. And currently it's, does Tom Wilson belong on the team? I believe Fried reported that Sweeney would really like the kind of game that Tom Wilson would bring, and whether you are going to try to just bring the best 12 forwards on the ice each game, or however many that you possibly can, or you try to make a little bit of a team here with roles and physicality, and you're like, well, the Americans are going to have the Kachucks, so what's your answer to that kind of thing? So that has already started, and the jerseys look cool too.
Yeah, I had completely forgot about the 4 nations face-off before the Wilson news came out, and then I saw the jerseys, and I read the Wilson news and discourse, and then looked at the jerseys and went, wow, I still don't care about this tournament.
I'll care when it comes. Like,
I think watch it, but I'll watch it the same way I watch San Jose versus Anaheim on a Tuesday night. I'm enjoying myself, but I don't really care.
Shut up. Oh my God. I will be invested as soon as the smack talk starts.
Well, that's not the NHL's doing. That's
us.
That's you. Yeah. No, it's a meaningless tournament. And again, I like hockey. I'm going to watch hockey. I'm not saying, oh, how dare they put on a game with good players. But in terms of results, yeah, I'm sure Evan's right. When it comes down to it and the USA beats Canada in the round robin or however the format works, yeah, okay, yeah, you might engage in a little bit of smack talk. But then I saw a tweet, I think it was from Scott Wheeler. I died laughing with the Tom Wilson discourse saying, hey, this feels a lot like when Team USA put Justin Ablocator on the team at the World Cup of Hockey back in 2016.
I don't think that's the same.
And the United States didn't win a game that tournament. Yeah. I don't think that extreme is going to happen here for Canada.
It's also a different tournament.
It is, but
players in the playoffs.
I think Canada can, skill for skill, go up with any country in the world. Outside of goaltending, they're probably still the best. Now, goaltending, that's another story. But yeah, Tom Wilson, I'm not even calling Tom Wilson a bad player. I think he's a good player. I think he's a better player than people give him credit for because of all the meme-worthy suspensions. People have this one view of him, but he's actually effective. He's not one of the 13 best forwards in Canada. Not close.
The last time he had more than 50 points was 3 seasons ago.
Yeah, he's a good, effective middle six NHL forward, and he plays his role, and he plays it really well. Who you pulling off the team for him? Like, there are so many better options, and you're just weakening your team to play this old school style of hockey. And I understand they got to respond to the Kachucks. Okay, so the Kachucks take a lot of penalties, score on the power plays. Like, what is the thinking here?
I have a terrible would you rather, and you have to pick one. Would you rather have Tom Wilson or Jamie Benn on Team Canada? Jamie Benn's been better than Tom Wilson in terms of counting stats.
I think it's Jamie Benn.
Okay. I'm making sure we're still.
I think it is Jamie.
The sanity check has been complete.
Yeah, I think they play the same role. He's just a better player.
Yeah, that is terrible.
I'm sorry.
Wow, how awful. Thank you for that. As you can see, the whole roster debate's going to be fun. So looking forward to that and seeing which Red Wings are part of the mix as well.
I should thank the NHL for the free content.
Does this tournament, and I'm sure we'll have this conversation numerous times and after this tournament's done, but does it just all feel like positioning in a big lead up for the Olympics, which is ultimately what I think players maybe wouldn't admit, some might, is more important. But the fans, I think, from at least my perspective, and I think you guys, the Olympics is absolutely more important than the Four Nations tournament.
100%. Oh, absolutely it is. I am a fan of the NHL as long as they get it to every country soon. I don't want to do this whole Four Nations thing repeatedly because I think that's dumb. I understand why they're doing it this time. I do want the excitement of the Olympics every 2 years, though. One can be more important than the other, but if you build this up where you have an NHL-run version of it, I don't care who owns it, and you can have the best on best, and you don't have to wait 4 years to see, if the state's goaltending dominance is going to translate into gold, or Crosby and McDavid to play together closer to their primes. Like, waiting 4 years for that to me is criminal, and I would like to see it on a more consistent basis.
I think that's closer to what they're actually trying to do.
Yes.
I don't think this tournament actually has anything to do with the Olympics in the NHL's mind. I think it's they're trying to establish every 4 years they're running their own tournament, and where I think they failed miserably on this, because I get where their mindset's at, and they're absolutely right to thinking about it, is they want to establish their own World Cup of hockey, and they want to eventually get that to feel like the same level of the Olympics. I mean, we talked about it in the summer when this was announced. Look at the World Cup of soccer. Like, that's the biggest sporting event in the world, arguably. And the NHL wants their version of that, which I'm in full agreement they should try to do. Where I get angry at this one is, why the hell are you doing 4 teams? Like, if you're making it the World Cup, make it the World Cup.
It's a Russia thing. It's because by making it 4 teams and you keep other teams out of it, then you have some cover for the whole Russia thing to figure itself out. I don't think it's not particularly close. Not that we're going to do a geopolitics segment here, but it's a whole Russia situation. That's what it is in my mind.
That, and I also think the NHL should definitely start small and use this as like a pilot program, because I'm not sure that they can execute this at a larger scale yet.
But they've done it in the past. 98 was a huge success. 04 was a huge success. Like, you can go way back and see examples of them doing this well.
Well, that was 5 years ago, but actually 20.
Oh my God.
And, costs have gone up exponentially. People's interests have changed. The game, I would say, globally has grown, but I think they need to get it right, small and incrementally improve it every year and start including more teams.
Which is what, I think the plan is here.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what they're thinking. I think Evan's right. That's what their mindset is. But it's when it's a prototype, it's hard to get as invested in
Exactly.
What do you guys think of the Frozen Frenzy? Every team in the NHL playing on a random Tuesday, staggered start times throughout the entire day. It was pushed a lot, on major media networks. Like, it was the NHL trying something.
They did it last year. I liked it. They did it this year. I liked it. This is one of those classic NHL things where I really, really think they're on the right track with it.
Yeah.
The idea is great. The implementation still leaves a lot to be desired. I think they left a lot to be desired in the matchups. Like, Panthers Wild, Islanders Red Wings, Sabres Stars. Like, this is a night where you should be pumping rivalries. Yeah, some teams are going to get left behind because you can only do so many, but yeah, the Red Wings, Blackhawks, Leafs, Canadians, Flyers, Penguins. Get a bunch of those on the schedule. And I think the biggest mistake they made in this one, it was NBA opening night. Like, if you're trying to use this to draw in new fans, man, Tuesday in October is not a great start, and then you put it on the NBA season opener. It's great for the existing fans, but you're not going to pull in a lot of new fans that night.
Yeah, like the most played clip of the night, and you were never going to beat this, was LeBron James and LeBron James Jr. taking the court as father-son duo.
Yeah.
And I have no problem with the NHL. The whole, like, we constantly have to dodge the other big, every other professional sports league that people are talking about is bigger than the NHL, practically speaking. So, yeah, to me, put it on a day where everyone can watch. And you know what? You're going to have a hard time competing against college football. You're not going to compete against the NFL. So I understand the aversion to weekends. But in the future, I do hope to see them be a little bit more bold with it. But overall, yeah, I'm happy they're doing it. Just do something like this. You can't find the perfect slot for everything. I think the whole one game the night before, then everyone, I understand there's scheduling logistics, but I'm happy they're trying it.
Yeah, I think they're on the right track. It's a good concept. I like having one early in the season. Again, they picked a poor day, but I think the general idea is right. I think they should do one in late March as well. Like, then the matchups don't matter as much because every team, not every team, but a lot of teams have a lot of vested interest in the stands. Like, we wouldn't have thought last year, if you asked me before the season, hey, is a Detroit-Montreal game going to mean anything? We'd been like, no. Like, one team, yeah, Detroit might be playing for something. Man, those two games against Montreal at the end of the season might have been the two most intense games in the NHL that season. If one of those falls on a frozen frenzy, that's jackpot. That's found money for the league. Buffalo could be playing Dallas again. But if Dallas is challenging for the division and Buffalo is challenging for a playoff spot, that game means a lot all of a sudden. So you can do rivalries at the beginning of the year. End of the year, you can throw whatever you want because it's going to matter for a lot of teams, no matter who they're playing.
The only issue I have with this is if the game is exciting, it's going to put spotlight on the difficulty for people to go and watch those games, to figure out how to watch those games, and potentially to find out that they're blacked out or not on TV at all. So
yeah,
there's a lot of other things that need to get settled around this, but I like the idea in general.
All right. Plenty more to come for NHL news for future episodes, but for now, let's jump into overtime.
We're going to overtime.
Overtime is brought to you by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. Again, if you want to support the show, the bonus content, which it's not just the bonus overtime episodes. We have a few things that we recorded over the summer that are coming your way. We just have to do the editing for them. You're gonna enjoy it. You're also gonna see exactly how bad I am at golf. Also, to open this overtime, I know exactly what I'm going to tell as a story to open this episode's bonus overtime. It's an Evan story, and one of the few times I get to trash talk him.
Yeah, Ryan actually snuck into one of his pickleball games and didn't tell him.
Yeah. Anyhow, you get the bonus overtime episodes, the giveaways, including the 2 tickets to every Red Wings home game, and you also get access to the Winged Wheel Podcast Discord. It allows us to do things like support the Jamie Daniels Foundation through initiatives like Winged Wheel Podcast Nights in partnership with the Detroit Red Wings and the Grand Rapids Griffins. It allows us to produce other great content like Expected by Whom, hosted by Prashant Iyer and Sean Shapiro. It also allows us to have Max Bultman of the Athletic Detroit on the Winged Wheel Podcast as a contributor. All that, lots more. So again, patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast. The Imperfect Patron says, as many have noted, the Red Wings have looked not great to terrible for most of the games this season, and even some of the top dogs seem off to a slow start. But it can't be this bad for the whole season, right? Am I too optimistic in thinking the play has to get better and closer to last season and thus better results? And maybe we'll look back at the early start and consider it a plus that we started at 500 rather than going 1-5. Thanks as always for the great content. Much more succinct, well-articulated way of saying what I was trying to say earlier, honestly.
Yeah. The regression this year to the mean means improvement. If it doesn't, don't worry. I'm a big fan of James Haggins and Michael Misa.
Oh, man. Martone, like there's a lot of fun talent in there. Joshua Valance says, just when I thought I could escape poor offensive performances with Michigan football, the Red Wings decided to follow suit. Preach, brother. A couple questions. One, did Rasmussen forget how to play hockey? He doesn't look himself right now.
I would love to single out Rasmussen because he has been bad this year, but I can say the same thing about 6 other forwards on this team.
Number 2 is, I might be seeing things, but did Larkin look slow against the Islanders? You asked me that same thing.
Yeah, it was actually something I said pre-show. I said, okay, am I crazy or does Larkin look slow? And I'm glad I'm not the only one noticing it because it feels awful to besmirch the good name of Dylan Larkin. But yeah, he looks slow.
That's why I'm saying, like, it just, all of this feels weird. Like, Rasmussen playing without intensity? Sorry, since when? Larkin looking slow? Sorry, since when? They're not 35 where you expect those things. It's a bad start, but the players are still the players, you know? So yeah, in a weird way, that's why you'd be positive. Let's go Coyotes. I mean, Red Wings.
Oh yeah, we didn't even talk about that.
Yeah, the first night of FanDuel Sports Network, and very quickly after Patrick Kane scored, they flashed "Go Coyotes" and then fixed it to say "Let's go Red Wings," and then the score bug went down for a while.
Yeah,
I think there's issues all across the league if I have that correct, but that was funny. Give Wallman the Heart says, is Edvinsson already the best D partner that Seider has ever had?
Yes,
decent chance.
Outside of like Wallman's best games, I can't think of. Well, I don't want to speak for his junior or overseas career. Wings fan in St. Louis, Scott, says hopefully the offense starts generating some scoring. Watching that anemic effort against the Isles was disheartening and nerve-wracking. Kasper looked good for his second game of the season. Who does Stevie Y try to offload or dump to minors if he continues to impress?
I won't single out specific people. There are lots of candidates right now.
Man USA fan man Adams says, Gustafsson, why would anyone think he should try to continue to run the power play? He can barely skate with the puck. He isn't crisp on the receiving or sending the puck. I know in Chicago and at times in New York Rangers, he was great, but good grief, can we get someone else in there? I think part of this is they brought Gustafsson in for this reason, and you don't want to give up on the player this early. Like, we're sitting here saying the offense is not actually this bad on paper, so you have to keep trying things. And they're trying the same thing with Gustafsson, because if he turns out to be like a flat dud, and again, you can't single out just one guy, but he has been bad to start his Red Wings tenure, that's bad news bears. And so I'm sure that's why they're trying. And it's not like the power play has been stellar without him or anything like that. Like, it's just part of the problem, but not the only problem. And that's what it is. Jack's dad says, if the Wings fail to make the playoffs, what bright spots in the season would have to happen to keep the coaching staff off the hot seat? As it stands, the team isn't playing with any oomph, intensity, or urgency. The power play isn't looking very crisp, and there just seems to be something amiss with the team in general. I like Newsy and his general calm, reasonable demeanor, but I wouldn't mind seeing some fire from him. And yes, only 6 games with an even split, but for a team that's trying to glow up, they're looking pretty lackluster.
This team's got to play with intensity. It's one thing to compete, bust your ass off and lose. It's another thing to look disinterested. Like, that's the worst trait a team can have, and we've seen that already a few too many times from the Red Wings this year. Yeah,
they can miss and do it in the same fashion as last year, and I don't think Lalonde's on the hot seat. You just can't have what's happening for the first 6 games consistently. And I just, again, for the millionth time, I'm not saying it's impossible. It happens in the NHL. So there, certain teams have to be, disappointing. They have to be at the bottom of the standings. That's how it works. But I would just be surprised if all of a sudden these guys stopped executing, at the very least, what they did last year. Avery Sloppy Second says, I'm starting to come around to the idea that a player's draft year should be when they turn 20 as opposed to 18, especially with the expected changes to agreements between the CHL and the NCAA. This would also open up a better argument for the NHLPA to have UFA start after 5 years instead of 7. I would also be in favor, however, of the NHL Board of Governors having a provision to grant exceptional status for up to 3 U19 players per year. What are your thoughts?
In theory, I don't hate that. I think there's a lot of cascading effects if you made that change.
I don't know about those specifics. In a world where you do go with an older draft, maybe every team has an opportunity in the first round to take guys, or with their first 2 picks or something like that, and then beyond that, because you don't want to keep the really exceptional players down. Like, there are a handful of players who are ready sooner rather than later, and I don't think you want to make it that dramatic of a hold off, but there's ways to do it.
I like the idea in theory. I think the biggest hurdle to this will be the NHLPA, because they don't want
guys getting paid sooner, right?
Yeah, they don't want to kick this can down the road even further, because the NHLPA already doesn't like how long it takes guys to get paid in the NHL as it is, between restricted free agency and all the other, limitations around it once you're drafted.
Yeah, it's a complicated space. And my biggest thing is I think teams have control for too long, and somewhere a GM is going to punch me in the neck the next time they see me for saying that. But I really think if you want to see more movement in this league, more excitement, you want to see teams come out of sucking sooner. And this is coming from a biased perspective. You should be able to get talent that isn't 31. And the only time you can get that talent is when you sign them for too long. Like, it's just set up where if you're signing someone in free agency, more times than not, you are going to be hurt for it in the long run. Like, you're just not going to be rewarded that way, except for rare, I don't want to say rare scenarios, but uncommon scenarios. If you bring unrestricted free agency sooner, then yeah, teams have a chance they want to spend their cap on a guy who's going to give them, really, really good years from age 26 or whatever it is. Then you add some excitement. But I know that's asking. The owners and the GMs would almost never see that. What would the players even have to give up in collective bargaining for that? God even knows. Anyways. Jonathan Melwish says, hello, gentlemen. With all of the talk of when to call up the current set of prospects, do you think that there can be improvements made in youth development at the professional level to which prospects can be making their NHL debut earlier? I actually think it's been good.
Are we talking as a Red Wings specific issue or like a league-wide thing? I think the Red Wings have been all right with this. I think the development's been pretty good. I think they just develop them well and then wait too long to actually pull the trigger and bring them up.
Yeah, like the last few years where the Red Wings have tried this dance of having like NHL roster players whose ceilings are lower than the prospects that would be wanting those spots, but in the short term are better for like an immediate playoff run. That's a whole different debate. But by and large, I think, they've done kind of okay.
Recently, it was an issue for a while with this organization, though. But recently, I think it's been fine.
Yeah. So, it's less about that. It's more about the philosophy at the NHL level, if that's something you want to disagree with. And then last comment here before we jump into overtime. I thought it was a funny one. Aaron Hudson says, I stayed up until 3:30 a.m. for 10 shots. I'm considering legal action.
It's class action?
Look, man. You would have had the case if it stayed at 10, but that's why they put that one back until 11 now. So
that was the one comment I forgot to make about the, what is it? Frozen frenzy, whatever the hell.
Please, NHL, please.
Enough with the F alliterations. Whatever the hell it was, is I had a plan of just sitting on my couch and watching hockey all night till I went to bed. Once that game was over, I was done. I was not watching another game.
I was in bed by halfway through the second. I woke up every time Ken called a big Alex Lyon save, and then, oh man, I walked downstairs after each period and was like, oh, nothing happened. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. Even the end of the game, you were like, oh, definitely like the dam is going to break and the Isles are going to score two quick ones, right? Like just the doomer in you. Nothing.
Yeah, it was Islanders got in the zone. Red Wings got it to the far blue line. Couple icings. Nothing happened.
I personally blame Lou Lamoriello. My name is Evan Lobsinger, and
whoa.
We're going to wrap up this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast. Thank you all so very much for tuning in. We'd like to thank the sponsors of the Winged Wheel Podcast, as well as all of our supporters on Patreon. We could not do this show without you. If you're new to the show, welcome. And if you're a listener of old, we really, really appreciate you tuning in. And if you want to support the show, again, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. It's a great time to join. We just sent out a bunch of fun merch to our patrons. And if you want to support the show, but Patreon's not for you, leave a rating and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever. Subscribe, hit the thumbs up or the rating or whatever it is, and tell a friend about the show. It really does help. To all of our name level supporters on Patreon, we could not do this without you. Arjun Shankar, Yves Bartels on behalf of the Sarah Grand Foundation, Aikfer, Samuel Soderholm, Icon, Alexander Hansen, Victor Zetterberg, Ghost of OSBP, Glenn Brabham, Croner's Left Knee, Ashley Whitehead, Sea Lion, Matthew M. Rice, Adam Rose, Adam Zuiza, Admiral Matt S. The Cheesebag Navy, Asher Killian, Best James Bond, Carl Brutinanaluski, Carl Provy, Citizen High Five, Clip Clop Nene, Connor Scovey, Craig Kibble, Denny's Gamer Girl, Derek Enstam, Seider, Dickens, formerly Marlon Winchester, DJ Denton, Eric Hill, God Creatives, Give Blood Fight Probert, Goose Looney's Drinking Club, Hockeytown Love, Hockeytown Mac, Hugh Jass, Hassam Al-Qasem, Jay Gollum, Jacob Turner, Jeff Pridemore, John Ingalls, Jonathan Miller, Kalen Wood, Marcus, Marty, Matt Keeler, Matt McKay, Michael Edlund, Mr. Kuzi, R.A., Riley Enright, Ryan Britt, Scott Martin, Skeletor, That's What I Appreciate About You, The New Jackson 5 Holes, Wallman's Elite Dancing D, Winged Boogie, Eyes Are Playing Stan, General Andy Bohannon, The Cheesebag Army, Sam Bankston, A.A. Ron, A.B., All Motor No Hands, Ann Stanislavski, Axel Sandy Pelika, Bellingham Acid Balls, Bex, Chimkim Nutgits, Commander Ben Barron, The Cheeseback Space Force, Connor Leighton, Corey Prida, Darren Fick, Datsukes Dangleberries, Dylan Larkin Trade Sacrifice, Eric Nance, Frank Stanley, Gene Sullivan, Grepsky, Griffey Boy, Huge in Korea, James Pridemore, Jeremiah Dobo, Jim, J.M. Rhapsody, Joey Jojo Shabadoo, Josh Yelton, Keenan O'Donohue, Casper the Unfriendly Ghost, Quaz, Les Grossman's Ungodly Firestorm, Linda Hull, Lucas Raymond, Ophelia, Proud of You WWP Boys, Ryan M., Steven, That Other Guy, The Hodag, The Hat 123, Trent Thorough, Wings fan in St. Louis, Scott, and your second favorite patron. Thank you all so very much. We'll see you 3 games from now.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to visit wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you'll find links to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find ways to support the show, like Patreon, official podcast merchandise, and more. And don't forget to follow us on X at Winged Wheel Pod, at Ryan Hanna, WWP, at Brad Crisco, and at Hockeytown Evan, as well as Winged Wheel Podcast on Instagram.